What's happening in the world right now, coming up on NTD News. First, our top story. The historic strike by actors and writers is taking a big toll on all kinds of companies that depend on Hollywood business. NTD takes a look at how it's affecting one company in particular. Former President Trump reveals what he thinks his biggest mistakes were during his first term as president. Find out what he'd do differently. The Black Sea grain deal is no more. Russia made the announcement today in the wake of the attack on the Crimea bridge. Welcome to NTD News Today. I'm Chris Beers. Our top news: more than a dozen train cars toppled off the tracks after a 40-car freight train derailed in southeastern Pennsylvania early this morning. Multiple cars were reportedly loaded with hazardous materials, triggering a Level 2 hazmat response. No leakage or injuries were reported. Officials evacuated homes nearby as a precaution, but observed no hazard to the public, adding that no further evacuations are needed. The cause of the crash is still under investigation. Disney now says the photos from its live-action remake of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs are real. That's after first saying they were fake when criticized. The Daily Mail showed photos and video that depict the seven dwarves from the classic story as one dwarf and six regular-sized people of various races and sexes. The Daily Beast asked Disney if the photos were real, and Disney initially said they were fake and wanted a correction from the Daily Beast. But the news outlet said that hours later, Disney backtracked and said the photos were real, but unofficial Disney shared last year that the seven dwarves would now be referred to as magical creatures. Disney made the renaming decision after criticism from actor Peter Dinklage, who has dwarfism. The first joint strike by Hollywood actors and writers since 1960 is affecting multiple dependent industries. NTD's Daniel Monahan has the story of a struggling provider of lighting and other equipment.
The company called Wood and Nickel has served Tinseltown Productions for over 3 decades, but the strikes mean fewer sets to rent its gear to. Owner Brian Godwin says sales dropped 50% within a few weeks of the writers' strike kicking off.
Now that the actors have entered in, this week is a disaster. It's down a good 50% again.
His once empty shelves are now brimming with equipment.
There are good days, don't get me wrong. It's a roller coaster, but there are highly impactful days that are like, the cash flow's not there.
But Godwin won't be laying anybody off. He guarantees 40 hours a week to all his employees. The business owner says camera people, grips, and electrics are all suffering.
Every day I'm getting a call or a resume sent to me. Hey, it's slow. You got any work there? I sadly have to say to them, we're not hiring at this time.
Employee Ricardo Zendejas says the company was slammed until COVID came.
And now that the strikes are going on, it has slowed down a little bit. But I'm seeing it, like these strikes are impacting a lot of people.
Actors and writers are both demanding increases in base pay and residuals in the streaming TV era. They also want assurances that their work won't be replaced by artificial intelligence. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Fox News' Maria Bartiromo asked former President Trump if he made any mistakes during his presidency. Trump revealed what he felt was the biggest problem.
The mistake would be people. I mean, I wouldn't have put a guy like Bill Barr. I wouldn't have put Jeff Sessions in. There are some people that I wouldn't have put in. Most people were good.
He also says he wouldn't have used former Defense Secretary Mark Esper. When asked why he put people he did not like in office, Trump said he wasn't familiar enough with people in Washington. He mentioned that he came into Washington politics from a totally different scene in New York. He says he is now more familiar than anyone else with people working in the nation's capital. He says he now knows who are the good ones, the bad ones, the smart ones, and the dumb ones. He also says that if he didn't fire former FBI head James Comey early in his presidency, he may have been able to serve his entire term. He says Comey was part of a plot against him. Senator Joe Manchin has raised $1.2 million in the second quarter of 2023, raising speculation he could announce a presidential run. He has not made an official decision on whether he will run for Senate re-election, make a third-party bid for the presidency, or retire. The Epoch Times obtained the fundraising figures along with other numbers showing that Manchin campaign has $10.7 million in cash on hand and $2.2 million available in his PAC. Two Republican candidates have announced a run for Manchin's Senate seat, but the money that Manchin raised is more than either of those rivals brought in during the same period. Manchin said he will make a decision about his political future this coming December. Coming up, a new law in Texas stops cities from mandating water breaks for construction workers. This is potentially deadly, so how did this law come to be? And how big will its impact really be? And airplane pilots are getting a raise. A new deal between United Airlines and pilots is worth an estimated $10 billion. More in just a moment, here on NTD News Today.
Did you know ESG is impacting every part of your life? From rising gas prices to global food shortages to out-of-control inflation, even losing your freedom of speech and being censored on the internet. It's all being driven by ESG ideology. Who's in control? What can you do about it? Find out in The Shadow State, the first documentary exposing ESG. The ESG movement of governments and corporations operates in the shadows. Only the light of truth can expose it. Watch The Shadow State documentary, streaming now.
Tired of scrolling Netflix? Trying to find something that's worth watching? Want to skip the censorship in mainstream media? Well, now you can with Epic TV. New exclusive content every day with over 100 never-before-seen movies, films, and documentaries. Available and streaming now at your fingertips. For a limited time now, you can get 60% off Epic TV by subscribing or upgrading to a yearly plan. Plus, get an additional $10 credit to rent featured movies on Epic Cinema today. Skip mainstream narratives and find quality family entertainment from the comfort of your very own home. Say no to big tech and subscribe to Epic TV.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone who's ever sold a home will tell you it's really hard. And it's one of the biggest financial decisions you'll ever make. That's why who you work with matters. Together with HomeLight, we take care of every detail.
You're not gonna get it all right. Just make sure you nail the big stuff.
Mama!
Like making sure your kids are in the right seat for their age and size. Get it right at nhtsa.gov/the right seat.
Welcome back. Texas cities will soon not be allowed to mandate water breaks for construction workers. The Lone Star State has experienced a severe heat wave this summer, and the new legislation is causing controversy among local officials. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the details.
Opponents of the law have dubbed the legislation the Death Star Bill. What it does is prohibit cities and counties from adopting labor regulations that go beyond state law. But there's no statewide or national regulations for water breaks. For construction workers, the danger is real.
Texas is the deadliest state when it comes to construction. One worker dies every 3 days in our state. In fact, more workers die of heat-related illnesses in our state than any other state.
Most Texas cities don't have a water break law, but Austin and Dallas do, one that's about a decade old. Currently, it mandates a 10-minute break every 4 hours. Dr. Neil Gandhi explains that the severe heat can cause a variety of acute health issues.
What we're seeing now during this current heat wave is folks who work outside are extremely affected by the high heat. We can see them really get dehydrated pretty quickly and pretty fast. Some of them have had to come in for hospitalization.
Texas Governor Greg Abbott signed the legislation back in June. It aims to stop regulation of small businesses. The representative who filed the bill called the growing list of city laws contradictory and confusing after a number of local businesses complained. Houston Mayor Sylvester Turner announced the city was filing a lawsuit against the state.
For a city like the city of Houston, we are a home rule city that is vested in the state constitution, which means we have the right to self-govern.
The law doesn't stop employers from giving their workers rest breaks. The co-owner of Dallas General Contractor told the New York Times he wasn't aware of the city regulation, but that it's common sense to give workers breaks in water. The new law takes effect on September 1st. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
As Arizona faces drought and intense heat, the city of Scottsdale has banned natural grass in the front yards of newly built homes in an effort to conserve groundwater. The measure was supported unanimously by the Scottsdale City Council and will apply to single-family homes. This is one among many attempts by Arizona to conserve water as the Southwest faces rising temperatures, decreasing groundwater reserves, and persistent drought conditions. In June, Arizona announced limits on construction in the Phoenix area owing to rapidly disappearing groundwater. Parts of the state have been in a long-term drought since the mid-1990s. The ban on natural grass comes at a time when Arizona is experiencing extreme heat with daily temperatures in Phoenix hitting 110 degrees. Already blistering temperatures are forecast to go even higher for Nevada, Arizona, and California, with some areas going above 120 degrees during the day and remaining in the 90s overnight. Senator Chuck Schumer wants the public to know more information about UFOs. He plans to introduce a bill that would create a commission to disclose sightings. The move has bipartisan support. It comes as whistleblowers claim that environmental agencies are withholding critical information. The New York Times reported the new commission would have the authority to force government agencies to declassify information on the subject of extraterrestrials. A former Defense Department intelligence officer went public recently with claims of covert programs to retrieve crafts of non-human origin. He gave both Congress and the intelligence community inspector general classified information about the programs. According to the debrief, he says he has suffered illegal retaliation because of his disclosure. United Airlines agreed to give pilots a pay raise in a new deal over the weekend. Joining us is NTD Business's Don Ma. Don, tell us more about this deal.
Yeah, so that's right, Chris. United and its pilots union reached a new labor agreement. This is apparently after 4 years of negotiations. So the deal was announced by the Airline Pilots Association on Saturday and is estimated to be worth about $10 billion in value, Chris, over the next 4 years. It could be the biggest deal ever. Now, according to a Bloomberg report, the deal will give pilots a pay raise of around 13% to 18%, and as much as a total of 40% over the entire span of this agreement. Now, here's some more details of the agreement. It also gives quality of work-life improvements, things like job security, work rules, retirement, and benefits. And United has confirmed as well, an agreement has in fact been reached with Airline Pilots Association.
Now, how does the deal benefit United Airlines?
Yeah, so United and pilot union negotiators will still have to work to complete the final language of the deal in the coming weeks. And then the union's Master Executive Council will vote to determine if it becomes a tentative agreement that the group will then put it up for ratification. Now, according to the union, 16,000 United pilots will be affected by the changes. So the new deal could potentially help relieve some pressure on the airline. United was criticized last month after a storm caused chaotic flight disruptions that left passengers stranded at Newark Airport. About 750 flights were canceled. And it's not just that. Recently, we've seen a lot of delays and cancellations to flights from other companies as well. There's been a pilot shortage in the industry. So will this deal tackle that? Only time will tell, it seems.
And how will the deal impact consumers?
Well, this agreement is estimated to be worth about $10 billion, as I mentioned before, over 4 years. I mean, that's got to come from somewhere, right? There's no free lunch, as they say. Now, is United going to pass it on to the consumer? Will ticket prices go up? I think that's something the company will for sure consider at the very least. And it's at the end of the day, it's all about supply and demand. There's a lot of demand for air travel, but there's a shortage of pilots. And the pilot shortage in the US has been ongoing since post-pandemic travel picked up. As of September 2022, the industry was reportedly short about 17,000 pilots this year, according to some estimates, and the gap between demand and supply could reach 24,000 pilots in 2026. So when the pandemic hit in March 2020, countries closed their borders, as you remember, and travel came to a halt. So carriers were forced to scale back operations, and that meant a lot of pilots were let go, laid off, or offered early retirement. So if the supply and demand situation isn't fixed, I mean, we could potentially see prices go up. However, airfare tickets has been coming down according to the CPI reports.
What's being done to address this shortage, Don?
So a number of things. Airlines have resorted to hiring from abroad, paying their pilots more. And as we're seeing with this deal, right? They're also taking a second look at pilot training requirements. As well, there's talks of wanting to raise the retirement age to try to keep more planes in the skies. And on the topic of raising retirement age, the U.S. House of Representatives will actually vote on legislation to raise the mandatory commercial pilot retirement age to 67. It was originally 65 years old. But here's the thing, Chris. Even if it's approved, current international rules would still prevent pilots older than 65 from flying in most countries outside of the United States. Other than that, airlines have also tried cutting flights to smaller cities. There were over 300 U.S. airports with less service in January compared to the same month in 2020. About a dozen small airports, including Williamsport, Pennsylvania, have lost service entirely. But you know, it's hard to predict what the future will look like. There's a lot of moving parts here, but you know, as I said before, only time will tell.
All right, thanks, Don. When we return, search efforts are underway in South Korea following severe flooding, with at least 12 people dead. Experts are now talking about how to prevent the next disaster. And a push for sanctions on China from the Democrat Senate Majority Leader. Find out what the issue is and what he's proposing when we return.
What does it mean to devote your life to the truth? Does it mean investigating communist subversion here in America? Does it mean exposing the deadly fentanyl crisis in the Midwest? Or spending late nights and covering deep government corruption? Because at a time when America's traditional values are under attack, it's the responsibility of righteous journalists to uphold truth and tradition.
Welcome back, everyone. Search efforts in South Korea continue as authorities look for more victims of a flash flood that occurred on Saturday. The deluge killed at least 12 people about 70 miles south of Seoul. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the latest.
A flash flood trapped 16 vehicles in a tunnel on Saturday after a river levee collapsed in Cheongju. The disaster killed 12 people, including 3 bodies found overnight.
피해가 나고 나면 Simply put, the primary cause was the collapse of the temporary riverbank, which led to the overflow of excessive floodwater. The next primary cause would be the failure to take preventative measures despite the presence of such risk factors, which resulted in the damage.
South Korea has recently vowed to step up readiness for extreme weather. Experts say not enough of the budget is spent to prepare for these kinds of disasters, even as more sudden and torrential rain is expected in the coming decades.
Local governments allocate 1% to 2% of their budget to disaster funds every year. When it comes to allocating a disaster budget, local governments use 30% of that for prevention measures and 70% is used for recovery after disasters. Whereas in advanced countries, they allocate 70% for prevention and 30% for recovery.
Days of intense rain, landslides, and floods in the country's central region have left 40 people dead.
People like to use expressions such as rapid response, emergency recovery, but that's wrong. Climate disasters are already underway, so now if you put money into prevention projects, you can do it at half the cost of recovery projects.
Officials have promised to spend more on natural disaster prevention. South Korea spent about $1.58 billion in 2022, 20% higher than the previous year, according to the Interior Ministry. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
Back from her recent trip to Beijing, U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said she's eager to work with China on areas of mutual interest. Those include debt restructuring for poorer countries, among other challenges.
There's much more work to do, but I believe this trip was an important start. I'm eager to build on the groundwork that we laid in Beijing to mobilize further action.
Yellen spoke on Sunday ahead of the G20 meeting in India. She said her visit to China set a better footing for relations between the two world powers. Yellen also laid out the next steps for the World Bank and other multilateral development banks. As for the ongoing war in Ukraine, Yellen added that Washington will continue to cut off Russia's access to relevant weapons and technology. The Biden administration's climate envoy John Kerry arrived in Beijing Sunday. Kerry will meet with his Chinese counterpart Xie Zhenhua for 3 days of talks. Discussions are centered on renewing commitments from the U.S. and China to reduce methane emissions. The Chinese Communist Party stopped high-level diplomatic engagement with the U.S. in August last year. That was after Nancy Pelosi, who was House Speaker at the time, visited Taiwan. The CCP claims Taiwan is part of its territory despite never having ruled the island. President Biden and Chinese regime leader Xi Jinping agreed at a meeting in November to restart talks between their top officials. But plans changed after the spy balloon incident at the end of January. China has the U.S. over a barrel on climate change, says Anders Corr, publisher of the Journal of Political Risk and principal at Corr Analytics. This as U.S. climate envoy John Kerry landed in Beijing on July 16th for talks with China's climate envoy and other officials. I spoke with Corr to learn more about his perspective. Anders Corr, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
In your recent article, you're saying that John Kerry must walk away from Beijing with a climate deal. Why the urgency here?
His reputation is on the line. America's reputation is on the line as global deal makers. COP28 is coming up in Dubai, and he wants a deal with China before he goes so that there can actually be progress there.
And you also said he's getting desperate for a deal, as we're kind of hinting at here. And you're saying that makes him a lousy negotiator. What could any deal he brokers look like given that?
He's not likely to get a concession from China. China is looking for concessions from the United States. You can see that in the Chinese reporting in advance of the talks. They're demanding things like, changes to our Taiwan policy, Xinjiang, other human rights issues. So, they're the ones who think they're in the better bargaining position. They think the U.S. is on its back foot, and it shows.
You said the CCP is extorting the U.S. for cutting coal in the article. What is China trying to get?
China is engaging in what I would call environmental extortion, where they know that we desperately want a climate deal, And so they are essentially risking, permanent global warming by continuing to expand their coal plants, their coal power plants. They know that's very bad for us, and they're looking for concessions. It's almost like using their coal plants as a weapon against us and the rest of the world.
And what else are they trying to get out of these negotiations?
They're looking for changes to our Taiwan policy. They don't like the fact that Pelosi visited Taiwan, for example. As soon as that happened, they canceled cooperation on climate for about a year, along with other things like fentanyl. So they're trying to leverage our desperation around climate issues for their political gain.
And who has the upper hand here in this situation?
China thinks it has the upper hand because they know, really because U.S. voters, especially Democrat voters, really wanted a climate deal, a global climate deal. China doesn't have to answer to voters. Xi Jinping is a dictator. He doesn't have voters he has to deal with. So he can just wait until the U.S., pressured by its voters, looks for a quick deal. And that's putting us on the back foot, unfortunately.
Anders Core, principal at Core Analytics, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
U.S. Senate Leader Chuck Schumer wants to sanction China over fentanyl. He's pushing for a bipartisan amendment to the upcoming defense bill. Schumer says the amendment would authorize the White House to declare fentanyl trafficking a national emergency and open the door to sanctions. The Senate leader says the bill will be brought to the floor this week and believes it will pass with strong bipartisan support. Paraguay is the last country in South America to still hold official relations with Taiwan. The country's incoming president opened up on why it makes more sense not shifting to Beijing.
We have no constraint on doing trade with China. We would love to do more trade with PRC, but we are also looking to have the market of the U.S. open. We think that this is going to happen relatively soon.
Santiago Peña says his country has an agriculture-based economy and needs to move up in the value chain. He said Taiwan makes the best choice. The president-elect is facing pressure from the agricultural sector back home, which wants to open up lucrative Chinese markets to soybeans and beef. But Peña maintains that Paraguay cannot rely on a single market. The country is also working on trade with Japan and South Korea. And if you have any news tips or feedback for the show, please feel free to email us at news.today@ntd.com. After the break, accusations fly after an attack on the Crimea bridge. 2 parents are dead and their daughter hospitalized with injuries. And with many Ukrainians having left their homeland to escape the war, how will the Ukrainian economy survive? More shortly here on NTD News Today.
Shen Yun Creations, the streaming platform from Shen Yun, featuring world-class dance, past programs, and all original music. Masterclasses, behind the scenes, comedy, and more. Explore shenyuncreations.com.
It's just clear as day. The media, whether it's broadcast, cable, or print media, has become extremely biased. And I started looking online for alternative ways to get information. And I saw an ad for a free trial. And I looked at it and I said, Epoch Times. I mean, come on, this is end of days type of stuff. I mean, what are they going to be talking about here? And I said, well, it's a free trial. Let me dig in. Is it giving me both sides? Is it giving me an objective point of view here? I have looked for opportunities to see where they might be biased, and I don't find it. It has given me a level of trust in media that I didn't think I'd ever get back. I love the Epoch Times because it has renewed my faith in the idea that a reliable, responsible, non-biased source of information is available. And I can say that I love it because of that.
Hey Bobo, do trees tell each other stories?
I'm sorry, I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, why don't we go find out? Listen.
Can birds draw pictures?
I don't have an answer for that.
Dad, do stars visit their friends?
Look!
Stay tuned to get 2 rolls of alien tape free. You wouldn't stick your mother-in-law on the wall, but you could with alien tape. It just sticks. Just peel and stick to make anything stay in place quick. Brick, pavers, marble, tile, plastic, even leather. Nothing works better than alien tape. You wouldn't stick your fishbowl on a moving car, but you could with alien tape. The secret is nano-stick technology that grabs and locks on to secure one side of the surface to the other. Alien tape secures in seconds, then twist, pull, and rinse to reuse. Call or go online to get your first roll of alien tape for just $19.99, plus shipping and processing. But to make this deal really stick, we'll give you 2 more rolls absolutely free. You get 3 rolls of alien tape for one low price. Order now.
To order, call 1-800-490-1364 or go to tryalientape.com. So call 1-800-490-1364 or order online at tryalientape.com.
Thanks for staying with us. The Black Sea grain deal is no more. Russia made the announcement today in the wake of the attack on the Crimea bridge. The deal allowed Ukrainian grain to be exported through the Black Sea. The Kremlin said the halting of the Black Sea grain deal had nothing to do with the bridge attack. Russia says the suspension of the deal will continue until its demands to get its own agricultural shipments to the world are met. Russia has complained about restrictions on shipping and insurance, hobbling its food and fertilizer exports. 2 people were killed and their daughter was wounded today in an attack on the Crimean bridge. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on what Russia called a terrorist attack by Ukraine.
Blasts were reported before dawn on the 12-mile-long road and rail bridge which joins Russia to Crimea. Videos circulating online claim to show the attack and its aftermath, but have not been verified. This graphic footage shows the real-world consequences of war. Innocent people traveling along a bridge, perhaps headed for a holiday, caught up in the carnage. An emergency vehicle arrives at the scene, but getting through the mass of cars proves difficult. Here, a policeman communicates with people while directing traffic. This daylight video appears to show the state of the bridge after the attack. Another video shows the damaged bridge stretch from the side. And here from above. Russia annexed Crimea from Ukraine in 2014. The bridge serves as a transport route for Russian troops fighting in Ukraine, and is a prestige project personally opened by President Vladimir Putin. Russian officials blame Ukraine for what they call a terrorist attack on the bridge, while Ukraine says the attack could be some kind of provocation by Russia itself, on the same day that Putin must decide whether or not to extend a UN broker deal that allows the export of grain via the Black Sea. But 3 Ukrainian media outlets say Ukraine was behind the attack using seaborne drones. Russia blamed Ukraine for an attack on the bridge last October, saying it was organized by Ukrainian military intelligence. Ukraine indirectly admitted to the attack months later. The Crimean Peninsula has long been a cherished vacation destination for Russians, especially after Moscow launched its invasion on Ukraine in 2022, and traveling to the west became much more difficult for Russians. In recent weeks, traffic jams to the entrance of the bridge went for miles on a daily basis as Russians went on holiday. The wounded girl, now an orphan, was being treated in intensive care. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
With the war dragging on, Ukraine's population is shrinking, and it could decline further by about a third over the next 30 years, according to a study published in March by the European Commission's Joint Research Center.
After fleeing the war in Ukraine, millions of refugees are beginning to think about settling for good in the countries they find themselves in across Europe.
I'm more effective here rather than in Ukraine.
Fashion designer Ksenia Karpenko has kept her business afloat from her current home in Tarragona on the Mediterranean coast in Spain, where she was on vacation when the war broke out. She had to downsize but kept going despite the war. Her team of 8 in Ukraine designs and makes clothes sold in boutiques in Madrid and Barcelona.
Sometimes we are given the circumstances that we didn't choose, but we have to live the circumstances we are given. And now I'm choosing to live the circumstances I'm given. And now, yes, I'm living here.
As a result of refugees staying abroad for good, the Ukrainian economy could lose up to 7.71% of its GDP per year, according to think tank the Center for Economic Strategy. Back in Ukraine, businesses are now grappling with the likelihood that many refugees will not return and that the workforce will keep shrinking for years to come. According to the United Nations Refugee Agency, only around 1 in 10 plans to return anytime soon. Labor shortages are especially acute in industries requiring high levels of education and training. 2/3 of the women who sought refuge elsewhere in Europe have a higher education, according to research published in March by the CES. And once wartime restrictions on men leaving the country are lifted, many could join families abroad, according to Ella Libanova, a demographer at the National Academy of Science. The Ukrainian government, however, is more optimistic about returnees, saying the patriotism has surged after the invasion. Oleksiy Sobolev, the deputy economy minister, told a recent roundtable he expected up to 75% of refugees would head back to Ukraine within 3 years of end of fighting.
After the break, Japan encourages more women to pursue careers in STEM. The Tokyo Institute of Technology aims to have women make up about a quarter of new students. And a veteran car designer in Italy is showing off his new concept car. The self-described failed painter's work includes James Bond's submersible Lotus in The Spy Who Loved Me. Stay tuned for more when we return.
I'm Evelyn Lee.
And I'm Kevin Hogan.
The stories that need to be told, the voices that need to be heard, the truth that you need to see. Get unbiased and in-depth news. Don't miss a beat. I'm Stephanie Cox. At NTD, we're here for you.
Welcome back. Japan is trying to encourage more women to pursue careers in science, technology, engineering, and math. Currently, only 16% of female university students are majoring in STEM fields. NTD's Andrew Thomas has more on the nation's efforts to close the gap.
Japan is making a big push for more women like Yuna Kato. She's just one of a handful of women in Japan studying science, technology, engineering, and mathematics.
I first became interested because I enjoyed math, so that was a big part of it. But as I continued to study, I wanted to do something useful for people's lives, like science.
Japan ranks last among Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development nations for women majoring in STEM. But Japanese girls score the second highest in the world in math and third in science.
There is still a strong unconscious bias in Japan that women are not suited for science or that they do not need to go to university. I think this is a reason why there are so few women in the sciences or in the STEM fields.
The Tokyo Institute of Technology aims to have women make up 20 to 30% of new students. Right now, they only account for 13%.
Universities have to make it known to the world that they want to accept female students, so we are taking proactive steps with the women's quota, strongly appealing to the world that we want female students to come to our university.
The current lack of female STEM students like Kato has become a big problem for Japan. The country is looking at a shortfall of 790,000 workers by 2030 in the IT field alone.
Japan's working population is declining more and more. With the birth rate falling and the population aging, it is a very important issue that the power of every person be leveraged, regardless of whether they are a man or a woman.
More Japanese companies are also taking steps to hire more female engineers. Mitsubishi Heavy has set a target for at least 10% of its engineers to be women, up from 5% in 2015. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
A veteran car designer in Italy calls himself a failed artist, but his works are appreciated all over the world. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the details on his latest endeavor.
Giorgetto Giugiaro wasn't always in the car business. He originally wanted to be an artist.
I am a failed painter. I was one step away from going to art academy. I didn't want to go into the automotive industry.
His latest car is one he designed nearly 50 years ago for Hyundai. He created the automaker's first car, the Pony sedan. The vehicle was Korea's first independently developed mass production model, but his next design, the Pony Coupe, was never produced.
The Hyundai Pony Coupe was born out of research to show how, starting from a widely used car like the sedan version, it was possible to create a product that was more hedonistic and not simply tied to Korea's needs of the moment.
Now Hyundai has asked the 84-year-old maestro to finish the job he started in 1974.
It was very satisfying to know that Hyundai wanted to celebrate this history in my work.
Over the years, Giugiaro has been responsible for iconic works such as James Bond's submersible Lotus in The Spy Who Loved Me and Marty McFly's DeLorean in Back to the Future.
Art is a magic word. Art is creativity. When I see a structure, a complex mechanical object, I consider it unrecognized art because for us, art means Picasso or Raphael or other great names. Industrial production also has an art content because there is the same magic that is found in the works of great artists.
The Pony Coupe is now considered a retro-futuristic classic.
I would say that certain aspects of the past will return. They will be revisited with the context of the present, accounting for the technological evolution of the industry. The technological leaps we have made mean we cannot entirely return to the past, but the form, the idea remain.
The Coupe's simple exterior, geometric lines, and uninterrupted surfaces have inspired a wave of other vehicles. Hyundai's hydrogen-powered N-Vision 74 made its Italian debut in May, alongside the recreated Pony Coupe. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
Coming up, a Florida neighborhood is experiencing an unusually furry invasion after dozens of rabbits take to the streets. More in just a moment, here on NTD News.
Life doesn't always give you time to change the outcome. Prediabetes does. 1 in 3 adults has prediabetes, but with early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. And you can change the outcome. Take the 1-minute prediabetes risk test today. Go to doihaveprediabetes.org.
It's a painting that is peaceful. There's a lot of beauty in it. And you forget about whatever you might be worried about.
My dad's name was David. He always talked about getting life insurance, and now it's too late.
No one was expecting my husband Dave to suffer from a heart attack. We didn't have life insurance. We thought we had more time.
Don't be Dave, and don't wait until it's too late to get the life insurance coverage you need. And if you don't have enough insurance to cover funeral costs, credit card debt, and other expenses, your family is going to get stuck with the bill. Call now to get affordable life insurance.
Just call 800-494-1562.
If you're over 50, you can't be turned down for this insurance, regardless of your health. Plus, There's no medical exam, no health questions. Your rate will never go up. Your coverage will never go down. And rates start as low as $5 a week. Remember, don't be Dave. Call now.
Call now.
800-494-1562.
One single person is sometimes all it takes to change the course of history. With courage and great effort, our ancestors built the pillars we stand on today, leaving us a legacy of art, music, and wisdom. At the heart of almost every culture is our relation and connection with the divine. Today, their profound contemplations, beliefs, and great sacrifices have at times become misunderstood and even ridiculed. With the help of academic experts, we'll shine a new light on some of the most influential and courageous characters in history and the miracles that surround them.
Back to the news. A mystery metal object is baffling locals and authorities after it washed up on a remote beach in Western Australia.
It appears to be a possible fuel tank from a rocket that was being launched in the last 12 months that's dropped into the Indian Ocean, somewhere in the Indian Ocean, and washed up at Green Head.
The massive cylinder is sparking speculation online. Some believe it came from the Malaysia Airlines MH370 that went missing in 2014, but one expert says that's impossible because the plane disappeared over 9 years ago and there should be more wear and tear on the debris. Local police are looking into the object. Turning to Florida, where a suburban neighborhood is dealing with an invasion of domestic rabbits. The fluffy creatures are roaming the streets after they were illegally let loose by their breeder. Here's NTD's Cost Jimenez.
This small community in Fort Lauderdale now has to deal with several dozen lionhead rabbits who have taken up residence in the neighborhood.
One of the neighbors moved a couple of years ago and she just left her rabbits in the street when she moved. They were not spayed or neutered, so they started multiplying, and now there's probably 50 or more rabbits in the neighborhood.
But the rabbits are not really equipped for outside life. Their thick fur and fearless nature make them sensitive to the heat and vulnerable to predators. Moreover, despite their cuteness, they can be a nuisance.
Well, every morning the first thing I do is get up and cover up the holes and chase them out of the backyard too. But, I'd like them, but I just wish they would live somewhere else.
Residents are now trying to raise money to rescue and rehome them. Local authorities have agreed to give the residents time to raise the over $20,000 needed, after initially saying the rabbits would have to be exterminated. Cost Jimenez, NTD News.
Bloating. When your belly feels full and tight. It's often due to gas, but it can be fixed with some remedies. Here's NTD's Gina Marie with Strong Mind and Body.
There's plenty of advice around about how to relieve abdominal bloating, but some health professionals have highlighted 3 natural ways. This can help people to put an end to the uncomfortable sensation of a bloated belly. Bloating is a short-term disease affecting the gastrointestinal tract. It's generally characterized by an excess buildup of gas, air, and fluids in the stomach. The first line of defense for preventing it is changing your diet. A few health experts have advised starting with the following steps. Number 1, drink water. Drinking water is probably the last thing people want to do, especially when they feel like their belly is about to explode. But registered dietitian and nutritionist Rachel Doyle said hydration is important for minimizing bloating. Drinking water may help to reduce bloating by ridding the body of excess sodium. Excess salt is often hidden in cans, frozen foods, and processed foods. Water keeps everything moving along smoothly in your digestive tract. This is essential for regular bowel movements. Constipation and bloating often go hand in hand. Aim for 8 to 12 cups a day. If that's too much, add fruits and vegetables with high water content. Examples include strawberries, apples, oranges, lettuce, cucumbers, peppers, watermelon, healthy vegetable soups, smoothies, and healthy yogurts. All of these will help the body to de-bloat. Number 2, add foods that are high in potassium. The second remedy is to increase potassium. A combination of potassium and water may flatten the stomach within hours. Potassium has natural diuretic properties, removing more salt in a shorter period of time. As a result, eating a diet rich in potassium gets rid of puffiness and swelling caused by excess fluids. Foods that are rich in potassium are avocados, bananas, sweet potatoes, spinach, coconut water, white beans, black beans, edamame, butternut squash, and dried apricots. Most people underconsume potassium. Potassium is a mineral found in fruits and vegetables that help to counterbalance sodium. If you eat a lot of processed foods, there's a good chance you may be retaining extra fluid and feeling bloated. This includes packaged foods, takeout meals, fast food, and restaurant meals. And finally, number 3, cut down on carbs. The final method to reduce distension is cutting down on carbohydrates. Eating too many carbohydrates will make it difficult for the intestines to fully absorb them. Instead, it will pass them to the colon where they are fermented by bacteria and produce gas. You may also want to try eliminating gluten. Observe to see whether the body feels less bloating after a period of time. Gluten can be part of a bloat-free diet if your body agrees with it. Try choosing the least processed sources of gluten. Examples include homemade bread or gluten-containing whole grains like couscous or barley. In closing, if you can't resolve bloating, be sure to reach out to a healthcare professional.
Tom Cruise famously saved the box office last summer with Top Gun Maverick. Could he do it again? Here's the early weekend box office estimates.
It's been a long time, friend. You've no idea the power I represent. It knows your story.
Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 opened on top with $56.2 million from Friday through Sunday. That's lower than the debut weekend of the previous film in the series, 2018's Mission Impossible Fallout. But the new film set a franchise record with $80 million in its first 5 days since opening Wednesday. Globally, the latest Mission Impossible movie racked up an estimated $235 million in ticket sales this weekend. Thank you for tuning in today. I'm Chris Beers.
Thanks for watching us on YouTube. Did you know YouTube only keeps selective videos on its platform? So if you want to make sure you get the full picture, just subscribe to our newsletter. Go to newsletter.ntd.com and sign up. It's free.